Listen, I'm excited for baseball to be coming back, but I'm not going to lie. I love the offseason too, the free agent signings, the trades. So, yeah, I'm having a bit of a hard time letting go. But then I thought to myself, hey, trades could still happen by the end of spring training, and that got me to thinking even more. What were some of the worst offseason trades of all time? There's a lot of them, so let's go talk about it. Starting off with the Angels, I have them trading for Vernon Wells. Back in 2011, the Angels were coming off a down year, but they had a good young bat coming up from the minor leagues in Mark Trumbo, so they decided to trade away their first baseman, Mike Napoli, who was a solid bat at the time, along with outfielder Juan Rivera to the Blue Jays for Vernon Wells. 4 days later, Napoli ended up getting flipped to the Rangers, who ended up providing solid offense for them over the next 2 years, and he helped them get to the World Series that year. As for Vernon Wells, though, well, let's just say that didn't really work out. He posted a .667 OPS for them over the next 2 seasons while missing a lot of time due to injuries before eventually getting moved to the Yankees. On to the Astros that have them trading away Joe Morgan in 1972. He was remembered more so for his incredible years with the Big Red Machine Reds in the 70s, but before that, he was with the Astros for 10 years and was starting to come into his own, posting a 5.7 wins above replacement in 1971. However, the Astros thought he was starting to become a problem in the clubhouse, and with them wanting more power in the lineup anyway, they sent him in a package to the Reds for power hitting first baseman Lee May. May ended up being a decent bat for Houston over the next few years before being traded again to the Orioles, but Joe Morgan went on to another level in Cincinnati, winning a couple of MVPs, making it to 8 straight All-Star games, and helped the Reds win a couple of World Series to put together a Hall of Fame resume. The Reds even got a couple other players here that helped them win those World Series, including Gold Glove center fielder Cesar Geronimo and a good arm for the rotation in Jack Bellingham. For the A's, I have them sending Josh Donaldson to the Blue Jays. Back in 2013, Donaldson emerged as one of the best players in baseball, finishing top 10 in MVP voting for 2 straight seasons. But after the 2014 season, the A's tried to sell high on his value, sending him to the Blue Jays for Brett Lawrie, pitching prospects Kendall Graveman and Sean Nolan, along with an infield prospect in Franklin Barreto. In the end, Lawrie was really only known for getting in fights and arguments with other teams and umpires, while Kendall Graveman had one okay season in Oakland, while Donaldson ended up winning the MVP for the Blue Jays that same year. Speaking of the Blue Jays, I have them sending Roy Halladay to the Phillies. With the Blue Jays trying to rebuild, they sent one of the best pitchers in the game, Roy Halladay, to the Phillies in exchange for one of the best pitching prospects in the game, Kyle Drabek, along with a catching prospect, Travis d'Arnaud, and a good outfield prospect in Michael Taylor. Now, they were regarded as very good prospects at the time, but none of them made an impact with the Blue Jays, while Halladay ended up being great with the Phillies. On to the Braves, and I have them trading away Adam Wainwright. Now, in this trade, the Braves got J.D. Drew, who did put up one amazing season there, but for St. Louis, they got 18 solid seasons out of Wainwright, who turned into one of their best pitchers of all time. Now, he did miss all of 2011 when the Cardinals won it all that year, but he was a key piece for them in the bullpen when they won the World Series in 2006. For the Brewers, I have them trading away Lorenzo Cain and Alcides Escobar to the Royals. Now, at the time, the Brewers had a lot of talent and they were going all in, so they made a bold move trading for Zach Greinke. However, they had to send their everyday shortstop and Alcides Escobar, along with a good outfield prospect in Lorenzo Cain. Now, for the Brewers, it almost paid off as they made it to the NLCS against the Cardinals, but Greinke ended up getting traded that next season, and as for the Royals, they ended up getting 2 key players that were a big part of their World Series championship in 2015. For the Cardinals, I'll go with them trading away Hall of Famer Steve Carlton to the Phillies. In 1971, Carlton was regarded as one of the more solid pitchers in the game, coming off a season in which he won 20 games, but Carlton wanted a raise, and the Cardinals didn't want any part of that, so they sent him to the Phillies for a slightly younger pitcher in Rick Wise. After that, though, Carlton went on to put together a Hall of Fame resume, winning 237 games with a 3.02 ERA over the next 13 seasons with the Phillies, while Rick Wise would only pitch 2 seasons in St. Louis. On to the Cubs and have them trading away Rafael Palmeiro to the Rangers. In 1988, had a couple of young first basemen, Rafael Palmeiro and Mark Grace. Now, Palmeiro, he lacked power at the time, so the Cubs decided to send him and Jamie Moyer to the Rangers, with reliever Mitch Williams headlining a package back to the Cubs. Well, that really didn't work out, as Palmeiro went on to hit .296 with an .840 OPS over over the next 5 seasons with the Rangers. He then went on to hit over 500 home runs in his career, and as for Moyer, he ended up not staying with the Rangers, but it's crazy to think that these two could have been mainstays for the Cubs for years. For the Diamondbacks, I have them trading away Dansby Swanson. He was drafted first overall by the D-backs in the 2012 draft, but with Arizona looking to bolster their rotation for the 2016 season, they traded Swanson along with Ender Inciarte to the Braves in exchange for Shelby Miller, who was in high demand that offseason after a good season for the 95-loss Braves. In the end, though, Shelby Miller would post a negative wins above replacement over the next 3 seasons, and he missed a ton of time due to injuries, while Swanson would go on to become a solid player for the Braves and was a huge part of their 2021 World Series championship. On to the Dodgers, and I have them trading away Pedro Martinez to the Expos. Back in 1993, Pedro was mostly a reliever for the Dodgers, and with LA coming off a 500 season, they wanted to bolster the top of their lineup, so they sent Pedro to the Expos for speedster Delino DeShields, who was coming off a good season in which he hit .295 with 43 stolen bases. However, outside of an okay 1995 season, he didn't do much overall for them, and he went to the Cardinals a few years later, while Pedro went on to become one of the best pitchers in baseball in Montreal. In 1997, he went 17-8 with a 1.90 ERA with over 300 strikeouts to win the Cy Young Award and would go on to put together a Hall of Fame career. For the Giants, I have them trading away Gaylord Perry to the Indians. Perry was one of the best pitchers in baseball back in the 60s during his time with the Giants, winning over 130 games over 10 seasons, but in 1971, the Giants saw an opportunity to get a much-needed lefty in the rotation who was also slightly younger and had very good velocity, Sam McDowell, who had a lot of success in Cleveland. That next season, though, Perry would go on to win the Cy Young Award and another in 1978 with the Padres, winning over 300 games for his career and was inducted into the Hall of Fame, while McDowell would only pitch 1 season and a half with San Francisco. Speaking of Cleveland, I have them trading away Brian Giles. The Indians were gunning for a championship in the late 90s. Those teams were absolutely stacked, but their window was closing, so they already had a lot of good bats and a solid rotation, but they wanted to solidify the bullpen, so they traded away a young bat in Brian Giles for the Pirates for one of the better relievers in the game in Ricardo Rincon. And yeah, this ended up being terrible for the Indians. Rincon was decent in Cleveland, but Giles would go on to become one of the best bats in the game in Pittsburgh. He posted at least a 5 wins above replacement over the next 3 seasons, while Cleveland would go on to lose Manny Ramirez in free agency a couple of years later. On to the Mariners, and I have them trading away Adam Jones. In 2008, the Mariners wanted to solidify their rotation, so they packaged their top prospect, Adam Jones, for one of the better arms in the game in Eric Bedard, but he ended up having a lot of injuries over the next few years with Seattle, while Adam Jones would develop into one of the best players in the game in the early to mid-2010s. On to the Marlins, and I have them trading away Miguel Cabrera to the Tigers. Now, the Marlins have made a lot of bad trades in their history, but the worst, in my opinion, was trading away Miguel Cabrera to the Tigers. Now, I know former President David Sampson has said they basically had to trade him away because they couldn't afford him, but man, this really did not work out for the Marlins. Now, they did get some highly regarded prospects in return in lefty Andrew Miller and young center fielder Cameron Maybin, but neither worked out in Miami, while Miguel Cabrera would go on to cement a Hall of Fame career with Detroit. For the Mets, I gotta go with them trading Nolan Ryan to the Angels back in 1971, which is now one of the biggest what-ifs of all time. Now, in the early part of Ryan's career, the potential was clearly there because of the velocity, but he had issues with his command, and after another inconsistent season in 71, the Mets decided to send him to the Angels in a package for all-star shortstop Jim Fregosi, who was coming off an injury-riddled season, and unfortunately, Fregosi was never able to get himself right after that, while Ryan went on to become one of the best pitchers of all time. On to the Nationals, and I gotta go with trading Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Dane Dunning to the White Sox. Now, I could see the argument for them trading Pedro to the Red Sox, but since the Expos were on their way to selling the franchise and Pedro wanted out anyway, I'll go with this instead because also it is the Nationals and not the Expos. But at the time, the Nationals already had some good pitching, but they wanted to bolster their lineup more, so they sent one of the top pitching prospects in the game in Giolito, along with a couple other prospects that were highly regarded in Reynaldo Lopez and Dane Dunning. In return, they got Adam Eaton, and sure, he helped them win the World Series in 2019, but his time overall in Washington wasn't very good, as he only put together a 2.4 wins above replacement over 4 seasons, while Giolito, Lopez, and Dunning have all gone on to have a lot of success in their careers. For the Orioles, I have them trading away Kurt Schilling and Steve Finley to the Astros. Now, back in the early part of his career, Schilling had command issues and was primarily used as a reliever, while Finley, who was a talented young center fielder, hadn't really shown much up to that point, and the Orioles already had a center fielder anyway in Mike Devereaux. Now, the Orioles were looking for a bit more thump in the lineup, so they traded Schilling and Finley to the Astros for first baseman Glenn Davis, who had multiple 30 home run seasons with the Astros. And you know how this goes. In the end, Davis had 3 injury-riddled seasons with Baltimore before calling it a career, while Schilling would go on to become one of the best pitchers in baseball and be a key figure in 3 World Series championships for the Diamondbacks and the Red Sox. For Finley, he would go on to become one of the best outfielders in the game, a very solid player in his career, and he also helped the Diamondbacks win the World Series in 2001 with Schilling. For the Padres, I have them trading shortstop Ozzie Smith to the Cardinals. Now, back in the 80s, Ozzie Smith was a talented young shortstop, but he was coming off an injury-riddled season and looking for a new contract. But with the Padres not willing to meet his demands, they decided to send him to St. Louis for Gary Templeton, who was also unhappy with his situation at the time. Now, Templeton didn't end up amounting to much in San Diego, while Smith would go on to put together a Hall of Fame career in St. Louis, becoming one of the best shortstops of all time, and helped the Cardinals win the World Series his first year there. For the Phillies, I'll go with them sending Ryne Sandberg to the Cubs. Now, back in 1982, Phillies shortstop Larry Bowa wanted an extension, but with the Phillies unwilling to do so, they decided to send him to the Cubs. But the Cubs general manager, Dallas Green, had managed the Phillies a couple of years earlier, so he knew the Phillies system very well, and he wouldn't do a deal unless Ryne Sandberg was involved. In the end, the Phillies caved, and they sent Bowa to the Cubs with young infielder Ryne Sandberg for shortstop Ivan DeJesus, who was pretty average at best. Sure, the Cubs did get Bowa, but the prize was Sandberg, who would go on to put together a Hall of Fame career. For the Pirates, I have them sending Willie Randolph to the Yankees. In 1976, the Pirates are coming off a loss in the National League Championship Series to the Reds, and they were looking to bolster their rotation. So they sent a promising young infielder by the name of Willie Randolph to the Yankees as part of a package for right-hander Doc Medich. In the end, he ended up only pitching 1 season for the Pirates and didn't help them get over the hump, while Randolph would go on to be an extremely solid player for the Yankees over the next 13 seasons, helping them win the World Series in 1977. Let's get back to a more recent one here, and that's the Rangers trading away Emmanuel Clase to Cleveland for Corey Kluber. Now, the whole deal was Kluber to the Rangers for Clase and Delino DeShields Jr., but man, this one was brutal for the Rangers. Clase came up in 2019. He looked great out of the bullpen, but the Rangers saw an opportunity to bolster the top of the rotation with Kluber, who was coming off a Cy Young season in 2017 and a 20-win season in 2018. In the end, though, Kluber only pitched 1 inning for the Rangers because of a shoulder injury, while Clase has gone on to become one of the best closers in baseball. For the Rays, I'm going to go a bit outside the box here and go with a guy that was with the Rays for basically 3 seconds, Bobby Abreu. In the 1997 expansion draft, the Rays selected the number 38 prospect in all of baseball, Bobby Abreu, with the 6th pick, who ended up getting shipped to the Phillies shortly after for shortstop Kevin Stocker, who was injured for a lot of his 2 seasons in Tampa, while Abreu went on to post at least a 5 wins above replacement over the next 7 seasons, and people today think he has a case for the Hall of Fame. For the Red Sox, I have them trading Babe Ruth to the Yankees, one of the oldest stories in the books. The Red Sox had won 5 World Series championships after winning one in 1918, and with one of the top players in the game, Babe Ruth, looking for more money, and the Red Sox owner Harry Frazee looking for more money to finance a Broadway show, he sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees for $100,000. And well, you know the rest. Babe Ruth went on to become one of the best players of all time and helped the Yankees win 4 World Series along the way during his career, and the Red Sox wouldn't win another World Series until 2004. Also, I have to mention Mookie Betts here. The Red Sox won the World Series in 2018, but they had a World Series hangover in 2019 and also had a depleted farm system, and with Mookie Betts coming up on free agency and unwilling to accept the Red Sox extension offer, the Red Sox traded him to the Dodgers for Alex Verdugo, Connor Wong, and a top 100 prospect at the time in Jeter Downs. Betts has gone on to win 2 World Series with the Dodgers since then, while still being one of the best players in baseball. And for the Red Sox, Verdugo was okay at best in his 4 years in Boston. Wong is still trying to figure it out as an everyday catcher, and Jeter Downs is playing baseball in Japan. On to one of the worst trades of all time, the Reds trading Frank Robinson to the Orioles. Now, the Reds were coming off a down year in 1965, and they needed to improve their pitching, so they decided to send their star player Frank Robinson to the Orioles in exchange for Milt Pappas, Jack Baldwin, and Dick Sampson. Neither of those guys did anything significant for the Reds, while Robinson would win the MVP and the Triple Crown the very next season while helping the Orioles win the World Series in 1970 over his former team, the Reds, and would go on to cement a Hall of Fame career. Back to a more recent one here, and I'm going to go with Nolan Arenado to the Cardinals. Now, I'm going to say this right off the bat. I think the big mistake here was the Rockies signing Arenado to a massive 9-year, $275 million extension in the first place. They should have just traded him before that, and they would have gotten back so much more. But anyway, since he was on a huge contract and coming off an injury-riddled season at 30 years old, the contract was underwater, so they ended up having to eat $50 million to get out of it. They ended up getting back lefty pitcher Austin Gomber and a few prospects. None of them have panned out. For the Royals, I have them trading away David Cone to the Mets in 1986. Now, Cone was a talented young arm at the time, but the Royals were looking to upgrade at catcher, so they sent Cone to the Mets for Ed Hearn, who ended up injuring his shoulder and only played in 13 games for the Royals over the next 2 years, while Cone would go on to have a lot of success with the Mets. He ended up coming back to the Royals down the road and was very productive for them over a couple of years, but to think, it's possible they could have had this guy for his entire career if they had just kept him in the first place. For the Tigers, I'll go with them trading Billy Pierce to the White Sox. And now, back in 1961, Pierce was a young arm with good stuff, but he had issues with control, so they decided to send him $10,000 for catcher Aaron Robinson, who didn't do anything significant for them, and Pierce went on to win 200 games for his career and became one of the best pitchers in White Sox history. For the Twins, I have them trading away Matt Garza and Jason Bartlett to the Rays for Delmon Young. After being drafted number 1 overall in the 2003 draft, Young was considered one of the top prospects in the game despite hitting an umpire with a bat. My goodness, what the heck was that? And came in second in Rookie of the Year voting in 2007. The Twins wanted to upgrade their outfield, though, so they sent shortstop Jason Bartlett and a young pitcher Matt Garza back to Tampa, and well, you know how this goes. Garza and Bartlett would go on to be solid players for the Rays, helping them get to their first World Series, while Delmon Young would be an absolute bust for the Twins. For the White Sox, I have them sending Marcus Semien and Chris Bassett to the A's. Back in late 2014, the White Sox were looking to bolster their rotation, so they sent a package of prospects, including Semien and Bassett, to the A's for Jeff Zamarja. Now, Zamarja went on to post a 0.3 WAR and a 4.96 ERA over 32 starts for the White Sox that year, while Semien and Bassett have gone on to have extremely successful careers, posting a combined 60 wins above replacement. And last but not least, I have the Yankees trading away Fred McGriff to the Blue Jays. Now, in 1982, Fred McGriff was slowly coming around in the minor leagues, but definitely had potential, and since the Yankees wanted to bolster their bullpen at the time, along with already having a first baseman in Don Mattingly, they sent McGriff and a package to Toronto for reliever Dale Murray and a young bat, Tom Dodd. Murray went on to post a 4.73 ERA over 2 seasons for the Yankees, while Dodd would never even play for them. McGriff went on to become an MVP caliber player with Toronto and ultimately put together a Hall of Fame career, hitting 493 home runs with an OPS of 886. Now, sure, the Yankees did have Mattingly, but having both him and McGriff's lefty bat at Yankee Stadium sharing first base and DH would have been absolutely diabolical. That would have fed families for generations. But everyone, those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. What are some of the worst offseason trades that you remember? Let us know down below in the comments. But everyone, if you can, on the way out, hit that like button for us. Subscribe if you're new. We're trying to get to 50K by opening day. But everyone, that's all I got. Go have yourself a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.